Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marcelo Grasso. I'm your host here at the Cycle of Judges podcast. Today, gentlemen and ladies, we've got a special treat for you. Today, I have my man, my brother, Mr. Jeff Soretta. He comes to us today because I have a topic that lays on my heart a lot. I have a few family members in the past history that has suffered from substance abuse. Unfortunately, I have buried more than one. And Mr. Jeff is going to show us at least some ways of coping skills today. I've got a couple questions for him. He was gracious enough to block out some time for us, and hopefully he can answer some of your questions. So without further ado, Mr. Jeff, how are you, sir?
I am living the dream, buddy. How are you?
Good, wonderful. First off, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from?
I presently live in upstate of South Carolina. I'm a married father of two beautiful daughters. Empty nester, though, thank God.
Oh, goodness.
And Navy veteran for 9.5 years. And I've been blessed enough to have addiction touch my life. What I mean by that is I've had the ability to learn how to use the skills that God gave us to try and get through any situation, not just applicable to recovery and things of that nature. But I've been a representative for a group called AL-ANON, which is an offshoot of AA for people that live with or have lived with an addict or an alcoholic.
Okay.
It's a support group for the enablers like myself and the codependents. I've been doing that now for about 11 years.
So you more specialize not so much in the addict getting clean, but the resources for the family who's dealing with these addicts.
Absolutely. Because
Gotcha.
One thing, step one, A1, subparagraph C is you can't fix them. So it's just about you. So.
Yeah, exactly. But so many times I know, we think we can. We think if we love them enough, somehow they'll get better.
Oh, absolutely.
I know
100%.
That was a big thing in our family. It was all the women, my mother and grandmother and aunts, and everybody just thought that they could love my uncle and then love my cousin, and somehow they would just get better. And unfortunately, it just enabled them to do more.
That's the idea. I don't know if you're a Superman fan, but it's Bizarro world. Everything is up is down, white is black, it's in or out.
Yeah.
So the things that you do your whole life with your loved one, you never call them your addict or your alcoholic because you don't own their dependency.
Yeah.
You don't own them. It's your loved one. With my whole life, you had to always, whenever your loved one needed something, needed help, you gave it to them. But unfortunately, when you're dealing with recovery or somebody who's dealing with addiction or alcoholism, helping them is hurting them. So you have to look at things a different way. It's bizarre.
I tell you, there's been more fights in my family on that very conversation, because all of us boys, like, we would you got to let him do this. You got to let him be homeless. You got to let him sit there and be hungry.
100%.
But the ladies are like, no, we can't do this. We can't do this. It broke up marriages. It broke up, destroyed a lot of things in our family that we are now recovering from slowly, because unfortunately both of them lost their lives to these addictions. Yeah. This is the road that it goes down. There's only two ways this is going to end. You're either going to stop, make life changes, and get better and recover. I don't know if you ever actually get better, but recovery, or you die.
Like, it's 100%. That's 100% accurate. I've spoken at dozens and dozens, perhaps hundreds of different conferences and conventions, and I tell people all the time, there's two possibilities here. They're going to get better or they're going to die. That's it. And
exactly.
But part of recovery, and people always say, well, as soon as they recovered, it's good to go. No, part of recovery is relapse. So prepare yourself for a setback. But again, it's a constant thing, and it's a disease, and we have to look at it that way. So we have to try and look, but like you were saying, the ripple effects of addiction, they go out and they affect the entire family. But mothers, more than anything else, have this maternal instinct of trying to fix. I know how to do it. It's my child, it's my loved one, whatever.
It's literally the opposite ends of the spectrum, and they're just button heads.
I can absolutely tell that it has affected your life because you're talking the exact things that what you're talking about.
I've been that one at 3:00 in the morning having to go grab my cousin and pick him out of a crack house. You know what I mean? With people just strung out all over the floors and looking at him. I'm not going to use his name, but I'm just like, where is he? And they're like, oh, I don't know. First, they want to lie for him and act like he's not there. And I'm like, I know he's here because this is where he always comes. Yeah. Stop being stupid with me. And eventually you would literally pick him up and drag him out of the house throw him in the back of the truck. And of course, when he finally gets to a little bit, it's always I'm sorry, I'll never do this again. I need help. I don't know why I always do this. And obviously, this substance that you're taking is more important than everything else in your life. And he would say it. He would even tell you, he would be like, look, I don't even do this to get high anymore. I just do this so I don't get sick.
Yeah.
But it's like the moment he woke up, the search would start. And his entire day was run by trying to find these pills.
I always liken addiction to a parasite. And that parasite will keep the host alive just long enough to keep being fed. And as soon as the parasite is awake, it says, feed me. It says, feed me. But as the host begins to sober up and come out of the fog, they begin to get that craving. And unfortunately, that's the cycle that goes on and on again. It's horrible.
And that leads me into my first question of the day is what are some healthy coping strategies that I can use to manage my anger and frustration when I get into this? Like I said, because even now it makes me angry, and he's been gone now for 5 years, but it still makes me angry because I still have friends that are addicted to drugs and alcohol because everybody thinks that it's legal, so it must be okay. It's no, alcohol. To me, alcohol is the worst.
It's a drug. It's an absolute drug, and it's the most widely used drug.
Exactly. So what are some of those?
Pizza doesn't help. I tried that for years. I think the first thing I learned in my groups was the first advice I got to learn how to try and cope with being an enabler or codependent is breathe, let it go, take a deep breath, clear your thoughts, because you get so tense because you feel like you're the only person that can fix this is me, and all the pressure's on me to fix this issue.
Right.
I'm the only person who can do it, and they're relying on me because, again, especially if it's your loved one, son, daughter, husband, wife, brother, sister, if it's your whole life, they've always leaned on you. And now there's this issue that you have to fix because that's your job. You're a fixer.
Yep. And with me being the oldest, I'm sorry to jump. With me being the oldest, it was always everybody comes to me. They come to me with their problems and I listen.
If you're the patriarch, and of course, being the patriarch, you have all the answers. When it comes to recovery and addiction recovery, you don't have any answers. But the whole thing you can do is just to take a deep breath, clear your thoughts, and breathe. Get it all out so you can make an adjustment. Yeah, exactly. Because there's going to be a lot of times when you're going to be holding your breath, trying to make it go away. And that's the opposite of what you should be doing. You should be doing is just letting it breathe first. That's number one. I would think that's probably the most important thing is it's got to get a clear conscience, get a clear head, and move forward. Secondly, setting boundaries and then adhering to the boundaries. We too often will set a boundary and then not follow up with it. The third thing I would probably say is to get out of your own head. You're now dealing with a situation you've never dealt with before in your life. So you can't try and apply everyday life lessons to try and fix an issue that you have no idea how to fix. So get out of your own head. And first of all, I don't know if you're a Christian, but I'm sure you are.
Yes, sir.
First thing you do is if you clear your head and allow whatever your higher power is, let your higher power take over. Okay. Because thy will be done if you let thy will be done. We always try and get in the way.
But here's the thing, Jeff, I got to have control.
That's human nature.
I got to control this situation. I got this.
I can't tell you how many times I watched everyone around me try and fix a situation, waiting for Super Dad to come in so I could take off my shirt and had the big SD on there, and I'd go ahead and fix it. Because how many times in your life, I don't know how old your children are, but I don't know how many times in your life we thought Mom would try and fix it and Dad would slide in. Kids were in college. They couldn't make the rent. Kids couldn't make their phone payment, couldn't pay their car insurance, regardless if they were in addiction or not. But this is period. Dad always comes in and fixes it. This is what we do. When a situation with somebody who's dealing with addiction or alcoholism, you try and apply those dad instincts to try and fix the issue. And that's money, that's taking control, that's asserting your authority. But none of that works. You end up looking embarrassed, broke, and humiliated.
And the people that you love the most, you're actually driving them farther away. Like the people I thought had my back, I learned really quickly didn't. They had their back. But it's just because they knew I had my stuff together. I wasn't the squeaky wheel at the time. They were the squeaky wheel, so they needed the grease. It got so frustrating. It was almost like they acted like I was a bad guy, like I was trying to hurt them. I'm like, I'm trying to save them.
It's amazing. you have walked the same path I have. And you don't realize you're a codependent or enabler until it's too late. Because again, you think you're just doing the right thing. You're trying to fix it. And you fix it by just dads fix things, or husbands fix things, or fathers fix things. We get to the point where you realize, wait a second, this is not making any effect. It's because you can't make it effect. No matter what you do, it's not going to change the decisions they make. You can't control someone else, but you got to take care of yourself. And that's the most important thing about any kind of groupie that you go to, as far as we always call it's called seeking serenity. They're seeking sobriety, you're seeking serenity. You're trying to keep yourself on the beam of not going out and enabling it, being codependent, because you got to take care of yourself. Yeah, but I would say those are the three big ones. Breathe, set boundaries, and get out of your head, because you can't outthink addiction. You can't.
So breathe, set boundaries, and get out of my head. So that leads us into our second question, that is, how can I set appropriate boundaries with the person while still showing compassion? How do I set those boundaries?
I'll approach this as a dad. Children are always going to be children, no matter if they're 30 or 3. I've got people in my life that are dealing with issues of addiction that are in their 50s and 60s that still count on me as being the savior. No one in your life has the right to confiscate your ability to be happy. So if you're going to set a boundary, you can compassionately set the boundary 2 ways. Be realistic, first of all. Hey, if you quit drinking, I'm going to buy you a Mercedes.
But yeah, that's not a boundary. You're literally trying to bribe them.
That's a carrot. And what we found out, and you'll learn hopefully sooner than later, is you can't bribe recovery. You can't compromise.
You can't compromise.
So, and you can't threaten it either. Either you do this or I'm going to get. But what you can do is lay out a realistic boundary. Like, for instance, you cannot bring alcohol or drugs into this house. That's a deal breaker. And if that happens, it breaks my heart, but you're not going to be able to live here any longer. If I could use a nautical term here, being an old sailor, if you're steering the ship, and the ship is like it's like trying to drive a brick. But if you're off by 1 degree on your bearing, an hour later, you're 50 miles off course.
Oh, goodness.
If a husband and wife aren't steering their ship in the exact same direction, the exact same bearing, this little gold band is not going to keep those ships from being separate. If you have the spouse or the other loved one in your family who's just trying to be it's my mom, it's my brother,
almost like
my
the
sister,
friend. Yeah, not the mom anymore. They want to be their friend.
We all have this instinct as human beings to want to be the one to crawl up in the cross and be the martyr. There's only been one, okay? He died for our sins.
Amen.
So stop trying to die for someone else's sins. As far as setting those boundaries, they're always going to be broken. And typically not by the person that you're trying to deal with. It's usually by a spouse or somebody else like that. So assuming that's going to happen anyway, you've got to make sure that you're all on the same page together. You have to make that decision. Listen, either you're all in with me or you're all out. So what's it going to be? Okay, honey, listen, we're only hurting the situation. So you're going to come to these meetings with me, or I'm going to have to go ahead and save my own serenity. And I'm afraid that this is going to be a situation where that might happen. Okay, because you got to save yourself. And like I said, it's a tough choice, but you've got to do what's best for you, because ultimately no one else is going to take care of you but you. Listen, you've got your wife, you got your spouse and stuff like that. That's going to, make your lunch and make the bed, do the laundry, and dad's going to cut the grass. But as far as taking care of your well-being, it's got to be your responsibility.
Oh yeah, nobody's going to do it for you.
But no one in your life has the right to confiscate your happiness, your right to happiness. Here's another thing about boundaries also people forget. A fence, a boundary, is to keep what's out there that could possibly hurt you or harm you or influence you away. But a fence also is to keep you on your side of the fence from stop trying to affect their life. Because we, as enablers and codependents, we try and reach across the fence and try and help them when no one's looking. But ultimately what ends up happening is the fence ends up getting holes in it, it gets pushed over, or it keeps on pushed back farther and farther. If you set a boundary, stick with the boundary. I can tell you from personal experience, the toughest thing I've ever had to do was stick to a boundary and push somebody out of my house after making it a boundary, and they broke that boundary.
And
that was the worst thing I ever do. And I'll give you an idea of what if you made the right decision. If you feel like you swallowed a hive of bees and they're stinging the inside of your stomach, That was the right decision. It's a lot of times the things that we do as enablers or codependents, we do because, and let's be honest with each other, it's because it makes sense to us and it makes us at peace. It makes us feel good.
Yeah.
Oh, I paid the car payment. It's okay now. I paid the parking, the traffic ticket, the DUI. I paid the rent. I paid the whatever it is. I feel good about that now. I have peace about it. But that's a selfish thing because we're doing it for ourselves. Okay? Sure, we're trying to help our loved one. But if we really truly were trying to help our loved one, we'd say, no, the tap is closed. It's no more. I can't help you anymore. That's it.
That's hard, man.
So if it feels like, if you make a decision and it feels like you've got a hive of wasps inside your stomach and just stinging the hell out of you, and you want to get sick to your stomach, you probably made the right choice. If after you make a decision and you feel good about it, let's go get some pizza. You probably did the wrong thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You should be ready to get sick, cry, be anxious, be full of tumult. That's because it's the opposite now.
As a man, the only thing we truly have in this world is our word. I mean, let's face it. And so when you set these boundaries, and like you said, they can't be unrealistic. You can't say, if you just stop cold turkey today, I'll do this. But once you've set those boundaries and they're appropriate, and you and your wife or you and whoever you're dealing with have set these boundaries, you have to stick to them. You just have to. Because if not, then anything you say from that moment on means nothing. It's almost like you've completely, those boundaries now, you might as well just smack me in the face because no one's going to listen to you and no one's going to take you serious.
You've lost all credibility. Remember, I don't want to come down hard on your loved one, because if they are in a rational mind, why don't you stop using this drug? Why don't you stop smoking meth? Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's going to kill me. But remember, they're suffering from a disease that's deadly, but it's treatable.
Yeah.
It is incurable, but it's treatable. Okay. But what I always try and stress to people is that if you get to the point where you feel like you're losing control, exactly, that's the point. You have no control over this. So say the prayer, thy will be done, and give it up to God. It's easier said than done, but it's simple. It's not easy, but it is simple. It's a simple thing.
Yeah.
Give it to
the answer is easy. It's just the execution of that answer is hard.
If you have a problem with spending money, stop spending money. Okay.
Why, but you never ask, why are you spending this money? It's because there's this big gaping hole in my heart that I'm trying to fill.
Listen, if I can't control my loved one's addiction, maybe I can try and I can have some happiness here, because ultimately we want our loved one to be happy. Yeah. And if they're not happy, we'll try and find it somewhere else. So
you almost start deflecting. So that leads me into my third question then, is what are some ways I can avoid enabling or codependent that behavior that may inadvertently contribute to the addiction? How do I avoid enabling? Would be the easiest way to say that.
Remove all human nature and pick out your heart. We as human beings are born to be compassionate. And I think that the secret of life, the meaning of life, is to help one another. That's the meaning of life. I think that all we're on this planet to do is to help our fellow man. That's it. Okay. With that said, how to approach not being an enabler or codependent, you're going to fall into the trap of thinking, I'm not enabling, I'm just helping. If someone says, I'm hungry, I need food, buy me a sandwich, or the worst thing you do is give me $10 so I can buy a sandwich. You want to help somebody? Give them a sandwich. But that's one thing. But if they keep on coming back to the sandwich over and over again, that's one thing. But understand this. This is hard for us to get our head around. If you were able to make something happen for somebody that's battling addiction, in other words, can you help me with my car payment this month? Can I get some gas money? You're now allowing them to take the money that they would have used for the gas and buy drugs or alcohol with it, because addiction will always find a way to be fed. It will, and if you tell it no, if you tell addiction, I'm not going to feed you no more, it'll give you the finger, it'll flip you off, and it'll go to the next person, and trust me, it will be fed. It doesn't have to always be by you.
It's always that way, and it always seems to be the weakest ones in the family. And then me, as one of the guys, I get angry at that. You know what I mean? Like I got this. My cousin was bigger than I was. Like this boy I've never seen when he used to get into fights, because he was a brawler. He never fought one-on-one. It was always 2 or 3 guys against him, and he loved it. I've heard all the defense mechanisms. I've heard all the rebuttals on why they enable this stuff.
Because you love them, you're not going to help them. Yeah. That's why. And once you have that epiphany, that we call it the aha moment, when you have that aha moment and go, oh, wait a second, this is not working anymore. And am I actually putting the needle in their arm? Am I actually pouring the shot down their throat?
Yeah.
Indirectly, yeah. What we do as enablers is we become our loved one's safety net. So they're going to take all kinds of risks and push that envelope because they know there's always this safety net. Take the safety net away and allow them to fall on their ass and hurt themselves, and they won't do it again. They'll stop to the point where the bruises happen so often, or the humiliation happens so often, they go, I don't want to do this anymore. And they'll have their aha moment.
Well, I guess that leads me to ask, like, how do I know? Like, is there like a definition or something I can say, this is an enabling behavior, this is not a enabling behavior?
Yeah, I think as human beings, as all being created in God's image, we all have the ability to, at first, help people, but also we're given the gift of intelligence. And if we see a pattern developing where we're constantly being the one to go to, we're constantly seeing, and if you keep on being the person to reach out and hand over it all the time, you realize, hold on a second, I'm being an enabler. A good definition of the difference between enabling and codependency is enabler holds a door open for somebody, and a codependent takes the door off.
Just takes it right off the hinges.
Yeah, there's no limitations, there's no speed bumps, it's all in.
It's just like an open faucet, right?
Oh, yeah. I've had people in my groups that used to drive their child around to crack houses to get crack and wait outside in the car while they're buying it. If you're in that car waiting, look in the rearview mirror. Guess what? You're looking at an enabler. Okay, you are a codependent.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is addiction will prey on the weak. It'll prey on the ones that it can constantly go to all the time. Once you realize that you're being used, any situation, I don't care if it's financially, relationship-wise, business-wise, once you realize that you're being used, you're being conned, it's the most humiliating thing in the world. You feel so sad because all you wanted to do was help somebody, and they're taking advantage of you.
How did Mark Twain say it? It said, it's easier to fool a man than convince him he's been fooled. Because it's like once you've fed into that lie and you've accepted it, now you're invested.
To go back to your earlier point before the break, women get it faster than we do. Women will realize they're being used a lot faster than we are, but they just can't say no as fast as men do. Men will figure it out. What the hell? No more.
Yeah.
I'm done. Either you get done too, or I'm going to be out of here. As far as how do you, the best way to approach it sounds insane, bizarro world, do the opposite of what your human nature tells you to do. If your human nature tells you to buy them the gas, don't buy the gas. Okay. If they say, I need to get back home, or I need to get back to the homeless shelter, then drop them off. Don't give them any money. You should make them a meal. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is never give an alcoholic or an addict money, because all you're doing is feeding their addiction, because you might as well go ahead and just buy it for them.
Yeah.
Money's the worst you can do.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I found out too. Just if they need things, buy them things. But don't buy them things they can sell. Buy them things that they consume. You know what I mean? Because so many times you'll buy them something, and they turn right around and they'll walk right to the pawn shop. Like, I've watched it.
One of the cycles that we do in this country where addiction isn't taken seriously. As of last year, 2023, 83,000 people died of opioid overdose in this country. If you calculate all drug overdoses and then add in alcohol-related deaths, traffic fatalities due to overdose, it's over 150,000 people. Now, if there was a disease in this country that killed 150,000 people a year, you would think the government would pay attention.
There's no money in it. That's exactly right. And it's an ongoing problem. It's not something that you can just, it's fixed, it'll never happen again.
Yeah.
Like you had said earlier, there are going to be relapses. It's going to be a continuation.
And there's a new kid on the block right now, and that kid on the block, his name is fentanyl. And fentanyl is in everything. It's such a small dose to get such a high effect. Yeah, and unfortunately, it's in marijuana. It's in pot. And the marijuana that, I don't know how old you are, but I'm 50 years old. But when I was growing up, the marijuana that was around now is 19 times stronger. It's bred to be more powerful. There's more THC than the marijuana back 40 years ago. And now, because they're trying to get the more high, any good businessman,
of course,
you own a business. So if any good businessman, what you do is you try and make your product the best out there, the most bang for your buck. And if you can, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll juice it up a little bit. So what a lot of these people are doing now is they're sprinkling the fentanyl in the meth, in the heroin, in the marijuana to try and give it that amazing bang. But unfortunately, all it takes is one more granule than necessary, or one over the limit, and you're gone.
Yeah.
There's 95% of all the fentanyl compounds, chemicals are produced in China. And 95% of all those chemicals are brought across the southern border. Okay?
So they're being made in China.
Correct.
And they're shipping them over on ships to Mexico.
China's sending the byproducts over, and the chemists are in South America or in Mexico, because fentanyl has a very short shelf life. So they don't make the fentanyl until it's actually getting ready to be shipped across the border. And it's all made and manufactured in Mexico and then brought across by smugglers. Not a political thing whatsoever. I don't care who you support as far as party goes, but close the border and you'll stop the deaths in this country.
I'm the family member of an addicted person, and I have questions. And that's what Jeff does. Jeff meets with families. He meets with friends that have people in their lives that are addicted to a substance. And he helps them through it, because let's face it, addiction just doesn't affect the person that is taking the drugs. It affects their entire family. It infects you. And I know it affects you. And that's why we're here today, to try to get some answers and try to, hopefully we can help guide you and give you some resources to help you. So Jeff, without further ado, before the break, we were talking about how we can avoid enabling our friends or family members. The next question I have is, how can I better understand the disease of addiction?
Let me put it this way. It's very difficult to try and assimilate a situation that you have no personal experience. With that said, approach addiction for what it is. It's a disease, okay? It's certified by the American Health Society as a disease. It's a bitter pill called I can't control it. How you approach anyone in your life who's ever had a disease. My father, rest his soul, died of lung cancer. It's been about 30 years. But the idea is to make sure that you approach addiction as it is. It's a disease. And they didn't choose this. They didn't ask for this, okay? Yeah. Did the things they do in life cause it to perpetuate? Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
By the same token, my father smoked 2.5 packs of cigarettes a day. So when he got lung cancer, I was sad, but I wasn't shocked. But I still had compassion for him. I still felt bad for him. I still loved him. And I wanted to make sure, I don't want to see him suffer.
Exactly.
With addiction, it is a disease. It's absolutely a disease. Is it hereditary? Most people think it's hereditary. So if you have a loved one in your family that was an addict or an alcoholic, there's a very good chance that their children will probably have the gene also. Yeah. Not all of us have the synapses in our brain that fires a certain way. If I have a drink, or if I if I go to the doctor, get my wisdom teeth out, I take a hydrocodone, I don't have this. Some people, they can just have one and that's it. Some people, oh my God, that was amazing. And that's where the cycle starts. If you look at addiction as it is, a disease, and remember, it's a disease.
Yeah.
Like anything else, cancer, COPD, any kind of disease that affects the body to where it breaks it down.
I didn't pop a pill and got cancer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I can empathize a lot easier with a cancer patient than I can with somebody who I see sneaking out at night to grab a needle to shoot in their arm.
Right.
Or I can empathize and have more compassion with someone who wakes up in the morning with a bad backache and goes to the doctor and he says, hey, you have MS. I didn't do that. But the guy that's driving down the street with a blood alcohol level over 1.5 or 2.0, it slams into my daughter's car and almost kills her. How do I empathize with that person? How do I have patience with that person?
It's easier said, it's simply applied. You have to understand that we, as the deal made by our Creator, was free will.
Yeah.
We have the choice to do the things we do in life. And sadly, a lot of times we do the things that God wouldn't want us to do.
Oh, that's what Paul said. Remember, I do the things I know I shouldn't do, and the things that I should do, I don't do.
Right. Ugh. Yeah. My favorite book in the Bible is of Thomas. And Thomas,
Thomas. The book
of James, actually. The book of James, when he talks about how you want to show your faith, Don't just tell me. Show me your works. Your works. You show your faith in your works. So I've always talked about how if you really truly want to show somebody you love them, show them you love them by not feeding their addiction. And then the whole idea is to, if somebody is suffering from addiction, it is a disease. Did they choose it? Like I said, they're probably born with it. Some addicts go into it, they become addicts when they try a drug the first time, and it's just amazing they won't get out of it. The pharmaceutical company in this country has produced 90% of the addicts in this country. Once they give you the prescription for the medication, and then supposedly the malady that caused the pain goes away, the addiction, the pain may go away, but the desire for the kick, the high, doesn't go away.
Yeah.
If you're trying to approach this disease as anything but what it is, as a disease, you can't try and tweak it, fix it, and make it go away. You can't make it all, you can't candy coat it.
Yeah.
Addiction is something that has to be approached a certain way. A, by a professional, and not by you, unless you are a professional.
Yeah.
If you have the connection, when I look around when I go to all these conventions and stuff, and I go to these talks, these meetings, I say, what's the one thing, the one common denominator all of us in this room have, that reason why we're here? You're all here because someone that you love is battling an addiction.
Yeah.
Okay. Because would you go to a meeting because your neighbor had an addiction? No. Would you go to a meeting if your mailman had an addiction? No, probably not. Somebody from church? No. The driving force behind any kind of enabling codependency is an affection. It's love. It's what's inside your heart. You want to do that because your loved one is battling this situation. So if you truly love your loved one, which that's the point, love loved ones. Mm-hmm. If you really truly love this person, approach their addiction as a disease it is. Does that mean you should go throw up your hands and go, oh, I love you so much, whatever you need, here it is? No. What I'm saying is, the surface thing is this. They didn't choose it.
Yeah.
If they didn't choose it, don't blame them for it. Now, any disease, cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, you mentioned earlier, MS, all these diseases, if you don't take your medicine or go to your treatments for them, perpetuate and eventually kill you.
Yeah.
So just because somebody has a disease, like addiction, that's great. Identify as a disease. You can feel sorry for them up to a point. But if they don't go to seek recovery, they don't go to meetings, don't try and get a sponsor, don't check themselves into rehab, or if they keep on using, you can sit back and go, I understand it's a disease. I understand they didn't choose it. I also understand is they're not doing anything to get themselves better.
Yeah,
And
it's like you got to have an accountability partner.
Yeah, and us as enablers and codependents, we have to stay on our beam also.
Yeah.
We have to go to our meetings. We have to work our steps. I keep this book on my desk and I read it every day. It's one day at a time because this is first it'll be a 1 minute at a time process, then 1 hour at a time, then 1 day at a time. Keep on doing the work because if they ever stop doing their work, taking their medicine, they will die.
Yeah.
That's a fact. They will die.
That's exactly right. They will die.
And if we don't stop, if we ever stop doing the things we're supposed to be doing, we will fall into the abyss with them, sadly.
Yeah. So that leads me into my next question is, what are some strategies for communicating effectively with my child about their addiction, with anyone that has the addiction? How can I effectively communicate with them without escalating conflict, without always turning into an argument?
Well, if we go back and we rewind the first part of our conversation, breathe, get out of your own head and set your boundaries. Okay. That being said, the most important thing I can tell anybody, I can tell any codependent, any enabler, let's just strip all that away. The most important thing I can tell anyone that loves somebody that's battling addiction or alcoholism is remember, they're still in there. They're still in there. Your loved one is still there. You're talking to somebody you may be angry with, you may be pissed off at, you may just be disgusted by, but you still love them.
Yeah,
and you're allowed
your best friend. It was still your childhood buddy. It was still your
and listen, you're 100% allowed to not like people you love. That's in the big book of compromise. Just because you love somebody doesn't mean you have to like them.
Or you don't have to like what they're doing.
Right. Honestly, if you approached it as a situation where every situation is different, I grant, but strip everything else away, strip all the minutia away, all the fluff and all the static away, your loved one is still in there. Don't ever forget that. And that's where the hope is. There's always going to be hope. There's no situation that's hopeless. No situation is hopeless. Miracles can happen every day. If you understand the fact that your loved one is still present in that body, they're being controlled by addiction, they're being compromised, they're being bargained with addiction. Addiction's almost like a possession, okay? Something's controlling your loved one to make the bad decisions, do stupid things, do embarrassing things that you just never. What are you doing to yourself? I see all the time people come to my meetings and all the parents, and they go, don't they know what they're doing to themselves? Now, if you talk to that person while they're sober, what I call being present, if they're absolutely lucid and they're present, they'll go, I can't believe I was doing that stuff to myself. Usually when they get to a point of, I'd say about 6 to 7 weeks of sobriety, they can think a little bit clearly. Most people will tell you that any drug or any alcohol that you've been taking over a long period of time doesn't actually leave all the evidence, all the influence will actually leave your body until about 18 months, about a year and a half. But about 6 weeks, 7 to 8 weeks or so of sobriety, they can start thinking clearly again. You may ask them, let me ask you a question. Why were you taking those pills? They could possibly kill you. And they go, I don't know. Because I knew it could probably kill me. But you don't talk to somebody who's battling addiction, who's under the influence of alcohol or drugs, and try to reason with them and make sense to them, because they can't. There's a fog there. So you have to wait till they're a little bit more lucid. You ever been on an airplane before?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sure you probably have. Okay, the first thing they tell you in the instructions is, in the event of an emergency, you put the mask on yourself first before the person you're sitting with you, if you're accompanying with it. Why is that? Because if you're incapacitated,
you can't help somebody else.
You can't help enough. So by all means, take care of yourself first and then worry about your loved one. Because listen, they're going to pull you down with them. They will.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So as far as the disease itself, baffling to some people to think about, why would somebody do this to themselves? They don't want to do it to themselves. They don't want to do it. They don't want to do it.
I know my cousin would always tell me, it's like, look, it was out of necessity at first. Then it morphed into something that I enjoyed. It let me do all this kind of work. It made me feel like Superman.
It's crazy because they say if an addict or alcoholic begins to get sober, they start getting the DTs or they start getting the shakes, as you say, they call it getting sick. And by having a fix, a drink, or whatever like that, it makes them they call it getting well. It's again, bizarre one. It's the exact opposite. So the most important thing to remember when you're dealing with somebody, especially if it's one of your loved ones, is that they're still in there. There is hope. Never ever write them off. Never write them off. And does that mean that you have to throw your arms around and go, I love your addiction? You can love them. What's the saying? You can love the player, just not the game. And the game, of course, is the addiction that they're dealing with. But your loved one is always, they're still in there. And if you're patient, if you work your steps, you'll be able to approach them differently. Can you fix them? No. Can you control them? No, you can't. And obviously you didn't cure it. So just keep this in mind, that no matter what happens, and this is going to sound so horrible, Marcelo, whatever happens to them, whatever path they go down, whether it be worst case scenario, you still have a life that's been given to you by the Almighty. And every life is sacred. And to take the life that you have been given, even if you lost a loved one, you have to still embrace that love, that life that you have, and go on. You have to keep on going on.
A relative that has these things and how they can cope. There's so many programs out there that are for the addict, but I think people struggle when they're the family member. It's okay. There's all these classes, there's all these resources for my family member that's addicted, but I'm suffering too. Like, this disease doesn't just affect them, it's affected me. We've said so much here. We've talked about, like you said, your 3 strategies. For 3 quick ones is just to breathe, take a deep breath. What was the second one? It was
boundaries.
Boundaries. That's it. Setting clear, concise, obtainable boundaries. And then the third one is get out of your head. Stop beating yourself up. Stop thinking that you can be Superman and save these people. Stop thinking that you are the answer. I hate to say it, but stop being so narcissistic. You're not the answer.
You hit the nail on the head. Honestly, that's the human nature part of us where we think, you know what, I can fix this. I can do this. Or you think, and this has happened many times, I've had people approach me and they go, how could they do this to me? How could they embarrass our family like this? And I'm going, what an ego you got. What are you kidding? This is not about you.
Yeah, this isn't about you. If you can help one that is going through this, that in turn will help you. You got to stop the fire, or the fire's going to burn down the whole house.
Ego gets in the way of everything. And what is ego?
It's
Edging
pride.
God out.
Yep, it's pride.
When you edge God out, again, he's not going to go ahead and force his will upon you, but he'll sit back and watch you burn. Unfortunately, that's the deal.
Ain't that the truth? I guess my final question for you, Jeff, it's been an amazing meeting. You've been an amazing guest. I can't thank you enough for coming on.
I'm honored.
I guess
honored you asked.
The best thing we can do is let's tell the people where they can go to get some help. If they're the ones that are struggling like this, and they don't have a support group, or they don't have a place where they can go and get some of these skills, where they go.
The two founders of AA, Bill and Bob, they used to have the meetings when they first started this back in 1936. They used to have the meetings for AA, for people suffering from alcoholism and addiction, in their basement of his house. And they used to be brought over to the house by their wives, and they'd stay upstairs in the kitchen. And they start kibitzing back and forth, or kvetching about their loved one who's suffering from addiction. And his wife said, enough of this. This is ridiculous. Let's go ahead and start our own support group, where we can go ahead and get together and get ourselves back on the path towards serenity, because their non-sobriety is driving us crazy. So they started this group called AL-ANON. And AL-ANON just stands for Alcoholics Anonymous, which is actually ironic because we're not, okay. It's just, but AA is Alcoholics Anonymous and AL-ANON is Alcoholics Anonymous. But it's basically, the AL-ANON was started as a support group for people that live with or have lived with someone that suffers from alcoholism and then later on addiction.
Gotcha.
And so that's if you think about all the recovery groups in this country as a big tree, and all the different branches, all different recovery groups, every leaf on there is a different counselor, coach, like that. The trunk of that tree is AA. AA was the granddaddy. It was the ones that started the whole thing, and everything started off of AA. AA is a step-based recovery group, and it's faith-based. So It is a higher power-based group. So whether that doesn't mean your higher power is Jesus, Allah, God, Buddha, whoever, you have to have a higher power in order to realize that you're not in this alone. You're not. Yeah. Okay. That's probably the largest or one of the largest recovery groups in the country for people like us, enablers and codependents, people that live with or have lived with a loved one battling addiction, and that's all it's for. It's You walk in and you go, the first day you walk in there, and they're going to give you all these different tips on how to get your person to stop drinking and to stop using drugs, right? No, not even a little bit. What it's about is you. Once you realize that these meetings are for you and not trying to get your loved one fixed, there's no tips, there's no crib notes, it's all about you and you not sliding down the abyss with them, because every person that walks into those meetings is there because they think they can somehow get a tip and write down how to fix their loved one. And that's not what it's there for. After about 6 weeks or so, 7 weeks, you realize, oh, this is for me. And once you start working your steps, and again, steps are repetitive. It's a cycle. You just can't stop using them. And each tip is there for try and get yourself, when your loved one comes back in your life, whether they're using or not, whether they're sober or not, this is a lifelong thing. And then probably the next biggest one, it's becoming really popular all over the country. It's a group called Favor, which is Faces and Voices of Recovery. Okay. And they're not a faith-based group, but they are like a jack of all trades. They do everything. They do addiction recovery, they do alcoholism, they do counseling for people that live with an Al-Anon thing. They do everything. And they're become wildly popular because they're all over the country as well also. They're not step-based, they're not faith-based. It's more of a therapy session, group therapy session. They also have individual coaches also as well. Like in Al-Anon, we have sponsors. Like I'm a sponsor of somebody. Yeah. And when you first got in, you had a sponsor. They can lead you along. It's like when I was in the Navy. The first couple weeks I was in the Navy, I had to have somebody. I was shadowing somebody. Yeah, learning how to do stuff. And that's the same thing. Learning how to make the coffee. And there's really bad coffee in Al-Anon groups too, also. But we just make awful coffee. This ain't the Navy. But Favor also has become wildly popular because they're all over the country as well.
So we have Al-Anon and Favor.
Right.
Okay.
And the thing about Favor is why it's becoming so popular is with Al-Anon, of course, it's the anonymity thing. We're Alcoholics Anonymous. There's no last names given. There's a secret handshake. I'm going to show it to you. Just kidding. It's not a secret handshake. They meet a lot of times in church basements or church halls and things of that nature.
Okay.
That's traditional. It's very old traditional stuff. Favor, they meet out in the open. They meet with everybody. There's no anonymity, things of that nature. Because again, addiction and alcoholism is a very public disease now because it's everywhere, and that's why it's become so popular. You can go to both. A lot of my people that go to my group, they'll come to my group after they go to their favor meeting. During COVID, it was this, and it was 12 people on a screen, 15 people on a screen, and after COVID, people lost that want for that personal contact, that human touch. So when am I allowed to say something about my channel?
Absolutely. I was getting ready to let you plug it.
When I started my YouTube channel, I really felt like there was so many people that kind of fell off after COVID, never came back to the meetings because they figured
church same way.
After COVID was over, look around. The churches are empty still. Yeah. Because it's just people lost the drive, the humph. But you can't get recovery by just thinking that it'll just go away if I just think it away or I pray it away. You got to use every avenue you can. So I started this YouTube channel, I don't know, 2 months ago.
What's the name of it? What's the name of your YouTube channel, Jeff? We got to know.
Okay. It's called It's Not Your Fault. And I struggled with different names to try and figure out, but that's basically listen, we as enablers and codependents think this. Listen, every enabler, every codependent at one time or another said they wouldn't have been using. Had I not gotten divorced, lost my job, had I not been mean to them, had I not let them it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And if you get your head around the fact that it's not your fault, if I can help one person not go down the same path I did, the same pitfalls, the same quicksand that I went down because I thought I could fix it, then listen, all the hours of show prep and all these videos I do and stuff like that, if they'll help one person goes, oh, I'm doing that. So if I stop doing that, then I'm good. I feel like somehow that I fulfilled God's glory and I've helped somebody. That's what we're here to do.
Jeff, thank you so much. And I'm sure the people that are out there watching right now and listening, they're going to come and see what else you got if they want to dive a little deeper.
I hope so.
Thank you so much for being a guest here. It's an honor. It's an honor. And it was with my own personal experience. Like, this is near and dear to my heart because I've had people that I've put in the ground and people that are still dealing with it today. So I've got both sides of those coins. And for a long time in my life, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know. And you told me.
One thing that people have to get their head around as far as addiction goes. There's two kinds of people in this world. People that will admit that addictions affected their life, their family, whether it be their immediate family, extended family, whatever, and those that try and ignore it or pretend it never happened. But if you dig deep enough, if you ask anyone in your family ever used drugs or alcohol with a problem, if they say no, go to grandparents, go to uncles, go to cousins. You'll find it. It's there. It's there. And unfortunately, it's everywhere. But people like me and you who feel like we have to somehow fix it, we have to fix ourselves. And it's not selfish. That's not a selfish thing. We have to take care of ourselves because no one else will. No one else will. But this has been my honor because no one's ever asked me to do this before. I've done this. I've done speaks and engagements all over the upstate. But being one-on-one with somebody who's taken the time to do this on their own time, I'm very honored, sir. And
Absolutely.
I'm grateful. And I'm blessed to have met you.
You too, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Pleasure's all mine.
All right, guys. That'll do it for today here at the Cycle of Judges podcast. Thanks for coming along. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. If you got anything, please talk to us in the comments, email me. All that stuff's in the description. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks.